Live music is really important, and there's a big difference because it's about the experience. There's always the communication between stage and audience.
We're on a constant battle, I think, as a grassroots music venue to sort of develop and enlighten people to that experience.
You have to have a physical place for this kind of culture to exist in. If you don't have a physical space for it, then it doesn't exist.
These venues that are really important, a lot of them have been around for many, many decades. They're struggling to keep the roof over their heads.
I think we'd be nowhere without small independent music venues, to be honest.
We've been here since 1994. I mean, the building itself dates back quite a bit before that. I think turn of the century, 1901 maybe. But I think it was a pub or a coach house even prior to that, which I think was a different building back then, which maybe goes back to even 1860. So, but in 94, it was just a pub that was owned by Marstons at the time. And it was my dad that came in here, basically had the idea of turning it into a music venue. I remember back in the day coming in here and measuring the walls, working out basically what we were going to do and how it was going to be designed, how it was going to be changed. It's gone through, I would say, like an evolution really of the last 28 years to become what it is today.
I'm a musician and I was touring a lot, and I'd come and do bar shifts here when I wasn't out touring. Gradually, as the venue expanded from 300 to 600 capacity, I was asked to come on board as a manager, and I've been here ever since. And basically, yeah, just seen it grow. The mood has kept the same from this sort of small thing to it's not big, but as big as it is now.
I would really struggle to put a number on the number of indie venues that I've played in my life, many, and certainly more rooms like this than any other type of room. Do you know what I mean? I've played bigger rooms, I've played big festivals and arenas and one or two stadiums in my time, but I've definitely done numerically a lot more of these kinds of shows and indeed gone to a lot more shows in this kind of space. So this is sort of definitely where my heart lies. One of the advantages of playing kind of more intimate rooms like independent grassroots music venues is the proximity, the physical proximity. You're a lot closer to the audience. The front row's right there. You can sweat on them. You can smell their breath when they sing back at you, or however you want to put it. In a way, one of the things that's harder when you graduate to playing bigger stages is trying to maintain that feeling, because generally speaking, most bands find their feet in smaller independent venues and then move to bigger places, and it can be a real struggle to take the feeling of a show that you build up in the smaller rooms onto a bigger stage.
I think it's really important actually to have independent music venues in your plethora of places you play, because you end up playing some festivals and stuff that, I mean, they're really nice and you get like a large crowd, but if they're far away from home and stuff, you don't get the music fans come in the local place, and that's the people you're actually aiming to.
If you can get the people
make fans, you know,
who come in to like actually directly watch you or watch a band similar to your sort of style that you're supporting or working with, whatever, like all those different bands can each support each other and share their different types of music.
And that crowd is way more likely to sort of get their phone out and follow you there on the spot, because
regularly on Spotify,
they're literally there to see a
whatever.
band. Whereas if you're at a food festival or you're at just any other festival, you're kind of there and music is secondary.
Grassroots music venues are the lifeblood. They're so important in the community, for one thing, but it's also just in terms of showcasing talent, sort of fledgling talent, is that they provide sort of the practice grounds for bands and artists to hone their craft. I mean, they absolutely are an essential element in the music chain. You can't take them out. It's part of that ecosystem.
I think it's critical to developing new talent and finding new people. I mean, if you go back to 2007, people like Adele and Ed Sheeran were playing in venues like this. They become a massive export for the country and for the industry.
Particularly here, we're able to offer local artists support slots in front of an audience that they may not get. So it's a full pro show, plus they end up playing with bigger artists.
I feel like it was our way, it was our foot in the door initially. Kind of like just getting on the scene and just getting our first...
Well, they still are important to us now.
Yeah.
Building
our first group of fans, I think, if there wasn't independent music venues, you wouldn't have had anywhere to play or anyone to support playing these venues. So I think They're very, very important. I mean, even now, it's kind of we're still playing them. We might be looking at going onto the headline rather than the supporting sort of thing. And it's kind of you find that they probably dominate the early to middle stages of a band's career quite heavily. I think without them, it would be really quite detrimental. I think, yeah.
I think that grassroots music venues and their significance for fans is an opportunity to communicate with the band or artist they might have stumbled upon and discovered. And it enables that conversation and fandom to be nurtured and fostered in the early stages of that artist's development. And there's a relationship that forms and builds through that can't be replicated in any other means.
The biggest issues, I would say, for grassroots music venues pre-COVID, I mean, it's a long list, I would say. We work on relatively small margins, smaller than what probably people would expect us to work on. Issues around licensing, noise abatements. The only two revenue streams, or the main two revenue streams that we have ultimately, are ticket sales and bar sales.
I think that most people in the sector know this, a surprising number of other people don't. Running an independent venue is almost always a labour of love. At the very least, it's not a way that anyone's going to become a millionaire, and there are people who sort of think that people who run venues are in it for the money, and it's like, if they were, they'd be idiots, because there's not a huge amount of money in this, even when it's going well.
It's always a struggle to sell enough tickets to turn a profit. The whole country has been working on it by the skin of its teeth for years and years and years. As soon as COVID hit and the income stream dropped, there's nothing to rely on to sit back and think, oh, okay, we'll be okay for a few months.
So I think when the pandemic hit, I don't think we thought it was going to be as bad as it really was. It was the 16th of March, I think, was our last show, and we pretty much got stopped in our tracks, I think, mainly by sort of just government announcements about it. I mean, the market just sort of hit a brick wall. As soon as people were sort of advised not to come out, our ticket sales just literally stopped overnight. And I think we all thought it was going to last maybe a few weeks or a couple of months or something like that. We quite quickly realised this was going to be a major problem.
Yeah, the first round of moving shows down the road, we were moving them to June, July, and it soon became apparent it was moving them to October, November, and then we started doing it again. It was really hard to see the length of it, and it's still going on now. We lost a show last Friday because the singer had COVID. It's going to keep happening.
We had a headline show booked at the Joiners the week.
We'd sold it out as well.
Literally sold out the week that they literally put the lockdowns in. It was the day after.
The day after.
And so we had to cancel that. Being honest, yeah, we lost a lot of momentum.
It was quite soul destroying for us as well. Kind of we probably did a lot less than we should have, and we probably could have capitalised a little bit more on it and posted a lot more online. But we kind of was at the point of, well, we can't really do anything. We were, well,
the whole world was in that point.
Yeah, I mean, I was certainly really distraught that we couldn't do this gig because, it was our first sellout show that we were headlining, and it was like this massive thing really building up to it, and suddenly it was, oh, we just can't play it anymore, and we're like, oh. And then I kind of just went in a bit of a hole and was just like, oh, there's no point really doing anything.
I literally remember talking to you guys and being like, yeah, we're doing this show no matter what, and we were so adamant that, like, even though COVID was spreading around, we were like, we're going to do it.
Because at the time, like the 2 to 3 weeks leading up to it, people were cancelling it everywhere. We were like, no, we need to do this show.
We need to do it. Huge for us.
I can't imagine what it would have been like to have been a business, but to run one of those venues. For a lot of people, the margins are so small at the best of times. I mean, these people are putting really sort of passion before profit in many ways. They're really sort of doing the good work when it comes to culture and the arts.
So when the pandemic first kicked in, I was in the middle of a tour and had to go home, and that sucked. And it was a difficult time for me. I earned the majority of my living from playing shows, and it's also the thing that I love. And so it was a bad time for me. But it was, of course, immediately apparent to me that there were other people who were going to have it worse. And the first people I thought of were my touring family, my band and my crew. So I got home, figured out how to do a live stream that was just really easy. I had to press one button. and did a show and set up a fundraiser and ended up raising about £45,000 for my crew, which was insane and so much more than I thought it was going to be, and it was so easy. And I went to bed and then slept off the hangover, and then you know, everything was still there and we were all still locked inside and the audience were all still there. And I was having a conversation with my friend Giles, who runs Nambucca, which is a venue in North London where I actually used to live in the hallway for a few years, believe it or not, and talking to him about his business model. Obviously it was completely hold below the waterline, but everything that was going on. So the following week I did a show where I played my first album as a fundraiser for Nambucca, and it raised, I think it raised about £12,000 for them.
One of the groups of people who are really staring into the abyss right now are independent venues. You know, these are businesses that are not exactly the most thankful of tasks to run at the best of times. They run on small margins, they run from week to week, and they are the places where our culture exists and thrives.
So then I sort of put word out saying, does anybody else want a hand? Each individual venue was doing the fundraising side of it themselves. So I don't have an exact figure, but I think we came in at just over £300,000 for indie venues around the UK. And, you know, that didn't single-handedly keep any of them solvent, but I like to think it helped, and it felt like a useful thing to do with my time when the world was stopped.
Support systems pre-COVID were pretty much non-existent, apart from the fact that Music Venue Trust, they were created in early 2014. It was set up to effectively protect, secure and improve the sector as a whole. And when the pandemic came along, I think their members grew twofold. I think they've got something like 900 plus members now of the Music Venue Alliance, which has just unified the whole sector and given us a lot bigger voice, because, you know, nearly everything in that sector is an independent, you know, group of people like us that obviously are just passionate about music and about live music and the community.
The Music Venue Trust has been a lifeline for several years. It's been a really good support network because the whole period has been pretty depressing. And a really significant thing is, if you listen to debates in Parliament, they used to just mention opera houses and theatres, and now the words grassroots music venue is quite often mentioned in Parliament. It's a recognition that it is really important and it does need supporting, because we all work to these tiny margins. We'll be all back to the state where we're in the position where any of us could go under at any point because the margins are so tight.
I think in terms of ongoing support and support that still needs to be improved for our areas, I think councils, local councils and government need to look at how they can support us. I mean, if you compare us as a country to a lot of other European countries, the sort of the subsidised support for our area of the business or of the industry is a lot more. There's a lot more there. I think that recognition also needs to come from, and that support needs to come from sort of like the higher levels of the industry as a whole, the music industry as a whole. So your bigger labels and the people like O2, arenas and concert halls, they need to realise that, you know, without us, they won't have artists to fill their venues. We are the research and development, if you like, for the sector.
I've done so many Save the This or Save the That shows at venues over the years, and proud of them all I am too. But the thing I always say at the end of the show is, please don't make this the only time you come to this venue. The whole point of this is that you come again, so pick up the listings leaflet on the way out the door. You know, ultimately, you might see what goes on to become one of the biggest bands in the country early on. You might see one of the best bands ever who never become big. Even if you see a band you didn't enjoy, you might make some new friends, you're still effectively in a pub, and it's not going to destroy your bank account to be there, and you are going to be helping to support a culture that brings forth all of the music that this country has contributed to the world over the last 60, 70 years or whatever.
Take a risk on something that you've not seen, not heard before. Often the best moments you will experience in this building are when something surprises you.
Hopefully if we can encourage that culture a little, then that will help.
Take a risk and buy a ticket, go and see a show. It's great.